see you all here on a somewhat snowy morning. My name is Rod Francis. I'm the planning director with the town of Brattleboro. You're here as part of a community workshop. It's the first one for a grant project that's running in town, funded by the National Endowment for the Arts, the NEA. The name of the project is Brattleboro CoreArts, and it's an exercise in visualizing and establishing the central importance of artistic expression and communication with the community of Brattleboro. So I'm joined here today by three consultants working for the project, Lily, Kim, and Olivia. They're going to lead you through a series of exercises designed to bring forth some information that we can subsequently record and map as part of the project. The exercise here is to reflect on and share your cultural engagement with Brattleboro, including the built form and the landscape, as well as the social setting of Brattleboro. So a little bit of background quickly about the grant for those of you who have been following this. Back in 2012, Zonistas, Kate Anderson and I got together as grant writers, and we submitted an application to the NEA Our Town grant program. This is a program that the NEA has established a couple of years ago, and it seeks to be able to demonstrate the significance of the creative sector and the arts more specifically in the idea of unique placemaking. And we submitted a grant that consisted of 3 tracks. This is the opening of the first track. This is a cultural mapping exercise including a discussion of the virtues and benefits potentially of a cultural district for Brattleboro. That process will feed into the second track, which is a series of panel discussions on what it means to be an artist in the contemporary context in Brattleboro, how the arts world can be better woven into the broader discussion of the community, and then how the community feeds the mind and the imagination of artists. And then the third track basically comes out of the first 2 tracks and is an juried artistic expression. Could be visual arts, or it could be music or something else, which engages with the landscape and built form of Brattleboro and the community that we have here, and is a lasting statement about the purposes of the grant by establishing some public art. So without too much further ado, I'm going to hand it over to the consultants for today, and they're going to explain the background of today's exercises.
Much nicer day today than last weekend when we originally tried to have it. So we're glad that everybody was able to come and share some of your time and your energy with us. What our task is, and overall is sort of comes down to cultural assets mapping, and that is sort of a mapping project that is based around the culture, creativity, and the artists community that exists in Brattleboro. And so that's kind of a newer task that is in place, just kind of focusing on the benefits of having a strong, healthy, vibrant arts community. And so kind of basically the main aspect of what we're kind of going for here is that there is a lot of things happening in Brattleboro all the time, and so there's a lot of deep constant artist activity and a constant morphing and changing of it, and how you take those ups and downs and kind of make sure that there is a more consistent long term. First up, again, we have Kim and Olivia is in the back there, and my name is Willie, and we are with the Conway School. And basically, kind of the big picture here is that we're also dealing with the idea of moving into the future, an aspect of sustainability, not just within sort of the overall context of what that is, but also the fact that along the 4 pillars of sustainability, one of them is in many ways cultural vitality, and that the more the culture is a part of it, the better and more vibrant a sustainable community can be. So our areas of focus in many ways deal with sort of authentic identity? What is the authentic identity that exists within Brattleboro? What makes Brattleboro vital? These are the kind of things we're participation and experience. Where are things happening? Where do you go? The physical spaces that exist and how you experience within them. How do you experience culture in Brattleboro? As well as visions for the future. Sort of idea of how can we create a more livable, creative community that thrives within this sort of physical and relationship extent. Cultural assets mapping is a new sort of idea that's kind of been put forward. And the basic idea is that you're mapping the assets in many ways. The people, the organizations, the places and spaces. And so a different sort of way of doing this, not just a sort of this is what's happening, but also a way of an interaction that happens. And so the assets, it's also a thing that's focusing on assets, focusing on what's here, the opportunities that are present, and sort of trying to identify those and identify places that can be built on and strengthened. And so the one thing you have here is obviously placing artists and everything in place. So the mapping process does come down to physical spaces, the actual physical buildings and places that are in place that house and make sure that foster the arts, that make sure that this is happening here. Without these places, certain things aren't possible. But there's also an aspect to mapping or sort of diagramming relationships and narratives. And that's many of the things that we're going to try to get to today is some of these aspects of relationships and narratives that happen within the arts community. And so here we have a just simple diagram of a tree, and when you look at it, you see the visual part that you see is the pretty crown, the leaves, everything that's in place. But it takes so much underground work or so much everything else that happens in order to make that crown possible. And so some of these pieces that are down here are just as important as the more present visual examples. So we're going to kind of get into an aspect of what makes art possible on a personal level and on a community level, what makes creativity possible. And the first activity will be based around that, and Kim will explain the basis of that.
So at this point, we want to hear your stories. And so we have these sheets that we will pass out. We'll start with an individual exercise, and then we'll move into small groups, and then finally we'll give you some time to present to the group, and we'll compile the information that we gather. So at the top, we ask for your name and address. The reason why we ask for an email address or a phone number is so that we can get in contact with you if we have questions later on about the content of the information. The section at the top, which is hard to read here, but when you get your sheets, it'll be easier. We're interested in the ways that you engage in the Brattleboro community. So whether you're a creator, whether we call it consuming, but what we mean there is the ways that we exchange information and we appreciate other people's art. So it could be attending a performance, it could be buying art or enjoying it in a gallery or cafe. So use this in the broadest sense. We leave this open for your interpretation, but we're interested in the ways that you engage in the arts community. And then there's also whether you're an entrepreneur, an educator, a student, or a volunteer. And then we ask for you to give specific information on how you engage. That includes, in this section, you can write in the ways that you might, organizations that you're involved with, places that you go to for these things. So we'll give you some time to do that. And then for the bottom section, our entire lives are basically stories within stories. And so we are trying to get just a little slice of one of these stories. So we'll have you, everybody.
Sorry, Kim's going to explain the 4 sections because they can be a little bit confusing. So
I'd also like to suggest, because there was a lot of activity going on while you were talking, and I'm not sure everybody heard what you just said. So if you're going to get
Okay. So we'll go back to here we have 6 sections. We've got producer, creator, consumer, entrepreneur,
You know, Kate, they need like to see what the
Yeah,
buttons
Then
are.
you just have to turn it off.
Yeah, like
Okay.
let's just tell them.
Student, and the last one was volunteer. And so if you just want to circle each one of those that you participate in, and then in the column to the right, explain how and where you engage in those activities. And then I'll move on to the next section, and you can go back and do that just because people will be on a different pace as we go through this. So then we're looking to get just a sliver of the arts that you engage with. So first you want to choose an activity that you've participated in. It could be an artwork, it could be a performance. Preferably it's something that you actively engaged with, although it could be something that you enjoyed or attended, like another performance. And you can draw a little picture of it. If you would rather just write it and then give it a title, that's fine. But we encourage you to use some creativity in that. And then we'll go through the 4 quadrants of that around that circle. And so for the social, what we're really looking for is the people that influenced you and inspired you to perform the art. So it might be creative events and gatherings that you go that provide inspiration. It could be encouragement from another, whether it's from childhood or from now that led you into the art that you're doing. It could be organizations or community groups, teachers, mentors, students, coworkers, or skills or knowledge that you learned from another person. And all of this contributes to how you came to this point in time right now.
Just within Brattleboro or elsewhere?
You can use it elsewhere. The artwork hopefully will have some connection to Brattleboro, but our lives are not contained to Brattleboro, so we want to recognize that. For natural and geographic, this could be natural features that inspire the arts, such as a river or a beautiful scene. It could be natural resources that are used in creative expression. It could be a geographic location and proximity to other places. The fact that it's in Vermont may have an impact on what allows you to do what you're able to do. It could be the topography and climate. All of these things impact what we're able to do and why. And then for places and spaces, it could be institutions or organizations, places of creation. This is really the spatial, how this art piece fits spatially into the area in the town of Brattleboro. So it could be places of sharing or sale. It could be rehearsal or performance spaces, gathering spaces for exchange of ideas and information. It could be outdoor spaces that you go to for inspiration. The financial and material resources, these are the practical nuts and bolts of how your artwork is able to come together. And so this is what enables it. It may be customers and sales, it may be donated funds and materials, borrowed funds that allowed you to do your art, materials, tools, could be grants and loans perhaps, inherited resources or shared or communal resources. And so with that, we'll leave this up for you to reference, but we'll spend about 15, 20 minutes on this.
What do you want in the square?
You can draw a picture in the square in the center frame of your art piece. So for example, if you made a mug in a ceramics class, you could draw a picture of a mug. Or you could do a little stick figure on a performance stage if you engaged in a performance. If you would rather just write it, you could do that too.
Just trying to add some expression
We'll
to this
have
whole
people also
project.
kind of focusing on each table just to help guide you through it as well, to help talk it over. So basically, trying to take like more of a type of work that you do.
So at this point, we've given you a little opportunity to sort of get the juices flowing about how your artwork relates to the rest of the community. And we want to expand this out into the rest of the community. So we're going to break into 4 tables. conveniently we have 4. And we're going to let each table take one of these categories, and we're really going to look at how the arts is supported by each one of these categories. And so we'll do it on more of a community widespread. So it won't be as individualistic, so it could be where you're seeing art happen socially, so the major organizations perhaps that are supporting teaching or engagement. It could be financial material, major organizations that are supporting on more of a financial basis. And all of these different ways you can, then the landscape, how that fits into art. So we'll just randomly place out these 4 categories and let each table work on it. We'll have a facilitator at each table to help guide the conversation.
It's difficult.
It's basically in relation to you go and experiencing other people's arts or your, so going to events.
Where do you those retreat trails?
Now you're talking.
Maybe turns out ideas that then go on and make money somewhere.
Yeah. Here it's kind of, you have all these, so you kind of pick one type. Yeah, so kind of pick one type and think of the people, the places that are important to making that facilitate that action.
I should take this opportunity to announce that I'm very, very appreciative of the Brooks Library for making the space available, and Jerry Carboni in particular, because this is a really vital cultural institution for the town, and we really appreciate it being here. And I think Jerry just managed to adjust the heat.
I tried to bring the heat down. Hope I didn't increase it.
Yeah, good.
One or the other.
So I think that's the way it's laid out. So, thank you once again, Jerry.
So at this point, we want to give you a few minutes to talk to someone, preferably pick someone that you're not familiar with, and just take those minutes in this town.
Or at least a version of somebody else.
And just explain your chart with them, and that'll generate some ideas. This will play into the next exercise.
Or more, right? How many people come to strolling? They have more of a
If it's a big enough thing, it will draw the town of how many big events.
And how many does the town actually want?
That, like, I talked to somebody who used to live, I said, how do you like living in, where did they move to? Saxon River, somewhere out there. I said, don't you feel isolated? They're like, no, because I come to the big city. So Brattleboro, even though it's small comparatively, is the big city for so many people.
Yeah, I just had that conversation last night with a woman from Saxton.
That sort of downtown's compact and defined.
Yeah, it's great.
If you need a little bit of city experience, which I think arts kind of do, you want to rub shoulders, then it can pull that off.
And the great thing about big cities is they have a green space right downtown. Central Park, London,
Right.
go on and on. It is not
People take
downtown.
respite.
You need Harmony parking lot to be a green space, period.
Oh, we're just kind of sharing
You went to Pete Seeger's brother's camp?
how you make.
I didn't know that. I mean, I didn't know he had a camp. I didn't know his brother. Yeah, so I'm interested in having like that.
I'm Kate Anderson. I am thrilled at the turnout for this first community workshop for the CoreArts project, which is the project initiated by the Brattleboro win of the NEA grant, Our Town grant. It's great to see so many people. What I've discovered lately, I used to think and say whenever I gave remarks that the assets and the resources in the town are these people, all of these busy people here. But what I've also come to realize that what's a really important part is the interaction between these people and the new ideas and the innovation and the exchange of ideas that comes out of the interaction, this sort of information sharing that is happening, and it's really vital. It's great. I can't wait to see what we get out of this, and then to edit and distill all of this information.
Now's the kind of traditional planners report out phase.
Yeah, so if all of you want to quickly select a spokesperson, we will have Olivia right on the circle, and we want you to announce your 3 items that you selected as the most influential within your category. And we'll see.
I should start out by saying that one of our group members raised a very, very important issue, and that's that a lot of what we're talking about here today is really known and visible and clear to all of us, and so it feels a bit redundant in terms of when we're really planning. There's so many things that don't get done. There's so many things, so many places that are under the surface that we don't get to. And so there's a little frustration in our group about that. So just to say that. But we are artists, so of course, forget 3 categories, we came up with 6. Sort of 2 parallel triads, if you will. There's one way of looking at it is the nonprofit sector, the commercial sector, and the individual sector. And again, in those sectors, there are both very visible and very unknown. And then the other is well-known, publicized events, the things that we see in the newspaper, we might hear about on Brattleboro TV or Brattleboro Radio. Then there are the physical institutions. It's pretty obvious, the museum, the senior center, the places, the River Gallery School, the places where we know art happens. And then again, the hidden one-on-one venues. We get a little glimpse into that on Gallery Walk. Little glimpse. Probably 10% of the artists in this community actually have visitable galleries. So that's what we came up with.
Wow. Actually, before you go on, when you talked about the invisible spaces, did you actually try and capture some of those invisible spaces were, or you just sort of left it as a category?
Well, we talked about, there's a lot of writing groups in the area. You know, certainly the most well-known is, I'm blanking, Right Action. But there's also an awful lot of spin-off groups that form, you know, an instructor will have a writing seminar for 10 weeks, and then people will branch off from that. The AIDS project, hospice, all have writing projects. You know, Veranda Porch goes around to schools and nursing homes and hospitals and all kinds of places and elicits individuals to participate. There's Gengarelli, too, Ann Gengarelli does that in schools and other institutions. So there's those kinds of things. There's artist visits. You know, you go to somebody's studio or you go to somebody's house and you look at what they're doing and you talk about, well, how did you do that? William Hayes, you know, these subtractive prints that he does that I think, I know how to build from the paper up. I sure as hell don't know how to build 10 different plates to create a full-color print. So those are the kinds of things. There's things like headroom stages that I know a lot of us haven't gone to. Equilibrium is a new space in town that's really trying to provide a venue for artists and art lovers.
They're doing a great job.
I mean, there's just tons of things going on, but 90% of them we never hear about because it's one-on-one stuff.
And there are only so many hours in the day.
Right. There's only and you have to earn a living. And if you make art on top of trying to earn a living, because most of us can't really make a living as artists full-time. There's very few people who can do that. If you're raising a family and working and trying to create art, there's not a whole lot of time for those social connections.
And resources.
And resources. So.
And spaces. Peter Johnson and myself and Jake are actually trying to develop that building that he has that he was trying to get the school in. Peter Johnson and Emerson's. Trying to turn that into an art center.
Cool.
Cooperative.
Okay. So with the natural and geographical, again, I think a lot of these things are going to be very common for everybody who knows and loves Brattleboro. So it seemed like there was some natural groupings here. So a lot of it, we immediately started talking about the Connecticut River, Whetstone, Wantastic, the rolling hills, the valleys, the mountains, just the general landscape, the clean air, the clean water. There was some discussion of how clean is our air.
And the water.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. But in that sense, from just sort of being in this region and as artists are often inspired by the place that they reside and they spend their time, there's just so much natural beauty in this area that inspires a lot of the artists in the area, we know and can imagine. The second piece of it was sort of strategically where we're located as sort of a central hub for the outlying areas, the surrounding towns that call Brattleboro sort of their big city, that a lot of their participation in the arts and coming to Gallery Walk or seeing a live event, some music or theater, but also if you scale out, looking at our central location, just sort of in the northeast corridor, you know, our sort of proximity to New York City, Boston, Albany, Burlington. If you kind of took a map and drew a 3-hour driving circle around Brattleboro, we'd be right in the center of the hub, the crosshairs of that region, those major markets. And we know that there's a lot of folks who come to Brattleboro for one reason or another, who live and work in the arts, and they fall in love with it, and they relocate, or they have a second home, or a second business, or something like that here. So being in proximity to those major markets and serving sort of another niche for their interests was a big piece of our puzzle here. And then thirdly, again, from shifting from like the natural landscape to the built landscape, you know, we've got you know, sort of this historic downtown, this old New England mill town feel, a lot of adaptive reuse from its post-industrial past to housing the arts organizations, independent studios, you know, and we feel that, you know, a lot of people are attracted to being in a community and a place like that where it's not too big and bustling. We don't have skyscrapers. We don't have the 24-hour nightlife or something like that, but we do have a good mix of sort of a small hometowny meets a viable city environment with our downtown. One of the negatives, not to focus on negatives, with that sort of downtown placemaking was feel that there was a lack of a piazza, plaza, a commons, not to borrow from the name of something we do have, which is the commons, but sort of that village green, that central gathering space where there could be festivals, events, or just casual gathering, musicians busking and children playing in the heart of the downtown. And then another, just to go back to the first one with the natural landscape, just to bring up another negative, looking at the history of Brattleboro and the healing waters that were here, and a lot of people coming here for the healing arts, and the fact that that is now, in modern times, a contaminated situation, that it potentially pervades who we are as people and who may have come here in this modern era for that same type of activity. So, you know, so there may be two things that we can work on, bringing some more of that healing quality back to Brattleboro and what it was known for many people in the greater region, and also, you know, potentially doing some shape-shifting with our downtown to provide more community gathering space.
I think we joined.
Move on to the police spaces. All right, lots of lists.
We have an exhibit. We were facilitated to fill this out. This was given to us. We didn't come up with it. The outcome of this brainstorming was that basically every inch of Brattleboro generates creative expression. There literally is no part physically of the town where that is not a factor. And that sort of came out of the number of spaces that we named, and the outpouring of recognition of unusual spaces that are unused. And then we were told, you've got to, somehow organize this into 3. We refused. This is important. This is important. As someone else mentioned, there's plenty of places that we all know about, and probably everybody in this room knows about a lot of the quieter places or the less known places. So what is the point really of putting them even up here? I mean, isn't that rather redundant, as the word that someone used? So I'm going to read these out, and I ask you to close your eyes and just listen. Okay, bars, the skate park, trails, the stone church and other churches, the strolling of the heifers, the co-op, the sidewalks where we have art on the sidewalk, literally, the senior center, the library, the Brattleboro Museum, the parking lots, the vacant lots, Inside Photography, River Garden, Asian Cultural Center, Whetstone Studios, Plenty Park, River Gallery School, cafes, public murals, the Vesteyville Commons, I don't know what that is, Latches, the Brad Center, the High School Memorial Park, Hooker Dunham, doing a new theater, Marble Music Festival, storefronts, Cotton Mill, Monroe Jazz Center, Harris Hill, Book Press, Equilibrium, the media, BDCC, public gardens, pop-ups, galleries, and sight unseen. Okay, this is only a partial list. I think it could be perhaps broken down into spaces that are within what we might think of as a downtown, although that is extremely hard to define just where that would begin and end, and spaces that are further afield. So that might be one way if you really need to categorize it.
I'll categorize it as infinite space.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
Okay, and our final group.
Well done.
So our group was looking at what are the resources, the financial resources and the material resources. And so one of the resources is all of us and the artists and the people who are supporting the arts. And then the children and the teens and adults and elders who are both participating in the learning workshops and the presenting workshops, and even just for internal purposes. So there was the people themselves, the people who are supporting arts and learning arts and creating arts. And it's a multi-generational thing. And then when we look at the arts too, part of it was that it's visual arts and it's movement arts and it's dramatic arts and it's writing and poetry and sculpture and music and all of the different things. So there was the people. And then there was all of the businesses that support the arts and the business people that support the arts, without which we couldn't have the arts. And they support with money and they support with places for the arts to happen. And then there were all the specifically places where you can learn. So that was one of the categories, was all the places you can learn. Yeah. And one of the resources was grants and donations, and many of them come from Brattleboro and from our area, but many of the grants come from different parts of the world. So we have a lot of money and resources that come to us. And then there's also where we get our resources. For example, you might be buying visual art supplies at Zephyr Design. So different venues where we buy our fabrics and we buy our musical instruments and we buy our costuming. And then another resource is how we market. So the radio stations and the newspapers and the different magazines, the Vermont magazines, and the different online places where we let people know what is happening in the different arts, Brattleboro, Putney, Brattleboroology, etc. And when I'm done, I'm going to ask you if I forgot anything. So I'm pretty sure. Did I forget anything? So that was resources.
Just in general, I mean, thank you. I know this. We kind of just got to the listing part of things, and that there is, it is 1:30 now, and so that is the official time. But we do have snacks, and we do also open it to people who want to stay and have a discussion maybe on some of the lacking aspects of some of these 4 quadrants. There's some ways that we can quickly talk about sort of maximizing the benefits and the sort of assets that do exist. So that is sort of like the next, so what sort of question that we naturally kind of come to. And people touched on the invisible things, and sort of thinking about how not only just what's not working, but how can you maximize or sort of take these assets that exist and sort of really strengthen them, and really sort of create the fabric that exists that we talked about, sort of the underlying fabric of the arts community, and how can that be maximized? Because we do have so many assets here, so many artists, so many spaces, so many, I guess, maybe community resources, so many natural, beauty, regional contexts. And so obviously we understand you're all very busy, and so that's up to you as far as staying and becoming involved in a general discussion and sort of coming as you go, as you'd like to. So,
I'm wondering what the next step is, and what might happen, what you might do with these charts that we filled out.
Well, with the charts, we'd like to, with your, especially if you left your contact info, we'd like to sort of, follow up with a few people, just to sort of like get a sense of how an individual artist maneuvers within the spaces that exist, and sort of get an idea of how people and spaces interrelate, and sort of get that, kind of graphically represent that in some way. So if you leave.
I'd like to know what the follow-up is going to be from this.
I'm asked.
No, well, but is there going to be like a meeting? Is there going to be
planning? Yeah, at this point, we would like to collect all of these sheets from you, and we will compile the information. We've been talking to people in town, and so we will have another presentation, and that's what the sign-up sheet is for. And so we'll have a follow-up to present what we found, and then also to receive your feedback from that.
And that'll be for you to know that at the same time this is going on, there are other layers that the consultants are working on in the community, and all of that will come together at a final meeting.
Yeah, so that'll be in early March. We don't have a date quite yet, but thank you for coming.
One issue that we could stay and discuss is how to reach the unreached population that can't maybe afford to pay the entrance fee to the museum or to a performance, or and there are scholarships at the Brattleboro Music Center and at other places, but maybe we could think in terms of how to expand that.
How to expand the outreach to various other populations.
Making it more available.
Okay, absolutely. There's aspects of that within, like, the social realm, and so anybody who sort of open up to ideas, or it makes more sense to kind of people moving around, so smaller groups to kind of generate more discussion.
My name is Kim Smith, and I'm with the Conway School. And what we've been doing is working on a cultural assets mapping project to look at what the strengths are in the town of Brattleboro, the assets, the resources that it has, in order to give the community a greater sense of pride, as well as to understand how we can build on it to create a more vibrant community. So the exercise that we did in today's community workshop was to bring the community together and look for ways. We were looking for them to fill out a diagram to understand the roles that they play within the community, and specifically where and how they engage with the arts, as well as to fill out a diagram which is looking to integrate all of the aspects that have influenced them in the social realm, in the landscape, how places and spaces influence how they engage with the arts, and finally the material and financial resources. So after we had them do an individual exercise, we shifted them into small groups to talk about it as a community as a whole, to really try to pinpoint what the key elements are that make this a vibrant community and what the greatest assets of it are on a community level. We had a really positive turnout today, and the conversations that came out of it gave us a lot of insight into the town of Brattleboro and all of the wonderful assets that are here. And so what we're looking to do is compile all of the information that we've gathered, and we will have a follow-up community meeting in about 3 weeks or so, so that'll be in the beginning of March, to provide the findings as well as to receive feedback from the community again. And all of this is to provide a document that allows the community to see the assets that are here. And so we will be focusing on two areas. One is the tangible assets that we have, so the places, the spaces that are available, the organizations, the people. And then the other portion of it is to tell the narrative of the community, and that's what really gives the places meaning. So we're looking at integrating both the place into the arts community and how all of that fits together. So this is part of a broader grant program. And so this is the first phase. This will, after we do our mapping exercises, this will be given to the town of Brattleboro and the Arts Council of Windham County, and they will carry the conversation forward into the future in the next year and a half or so at this point, to have further discussions of a possible cultural district in the town, as well as to celebrate the vibrancy of the town through a public art piece.